Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to a quick review of Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. What I want to do is give a brief overview of the book's about, tell you the things that I liked, and tell you the things that I didn't like. Jumping straight into it, this is Emily Henry's latest release. It's her yearly release for 2025. Follows the journalist Alice Scott, and she's got a scoop on an old celebrity who has taken themselves out of the limelight and disappeared off the face of the earth for many decades in Margaret Ives. Used to be the tabloid talk of the town many decades ago, and Alice thinks she found her, and she wants to write her biography. So she gets to the town, and she realizes that another journalist, a famous journalist, Hayden, has gotten there first, or gotten there around the same time. And Margaret wants them to compete against each other. They both get to interview, only one gets the book, and the plot ensues. Obviously, Emily Henry is a romance author, so if you guessed that they would have a romance, the two journalists, you would be correct in that regard. I am a big fan of Emily Henry. I started reading her books beginning of last year, and I've read her two latest yearly releases. So I read this one, and I read Funny Stories came out last year, then I read two other of hers at the beginning of last year. So this is my fourth Emily Henry book. And I will say, right off the bat, just so you get my opinions before I go into the nitty-gritty of it, I think this is my favorite Emily Henry book, but I don't think it's her best romance book. And that's because, and she even says this in her afterword at the end of the book, it's a bit of a departure for Emily Henry. It's a lot bit, I would say, plot focused. It's about the story. There's two parallel storylines going on. We're flipping back between Alice and Hayden's story and Margaret's story in the back, and there's twists and there's turns. And in that regard, it's very different than any Emily Henry book that I've read before. Usually it's two people, they're in a unique scenario, it's their romance mixed with a little bit of the main character's family trauma, and that kind of intertwines it. That's kind of like the backbone of the story while the romance is bouncing off, and usually the person solves their trauma while also getting with the person. That's kind of the Emily Henry formula. That's still here, don't get me wrong, there is still romance, there is still family trauma, don't get me wrong, but the writing style is a lot more focused on the intrigue of this Margaret Ives and unpeeling her family's backstory all the way back, like multiple generations of the Ives family. And there's a payoff at the end where all of this knowledge kind of comes to the forefront. And overall, I very much enjoyed it. I really like a plot forward book with romance intertwined. I think pure romances are fun, but they are a little shallow at times. And I think Emily Henry is a great, solid writer, but I never thought her books were extraordinarily deep. And I think this one goes further than any other ones, which is why I think I like it so much. That being said, I do think there were some kinks that needed to be worked out in terms of this writing style. If she's going to commit to this writing style in the future. Because of like the dual storylines, I feel like some of the romance aspects that Emily Henry is so good at were a little bit sacrificed. That being said, the romance in this book is a lot better than Funny Story. If you saw my review on that, I did not really like that book very much. And it's because, and I said this in that video too, but there's two things you're looking for in a romance book, right? It's the promise of the premise. So usually in her books, they're set up in a wacky scenario. It's like exes pretending to be back together. In Funny Story's case, it was two couples. The girl gets dumped in one couple, the boy gets dumped in the other. They have to live together, and then they become the couple. That's like the promise of the premise, right? And they both get invited to the other couple who got together's wedding. So that the hijinks, the promise of the premise would be like, they got to fake being a couple at the wedding just to get back at them, like how we can get together too, and then like they don't do it. That was never really fulfilled. And probably more sacrilegiously, the guy in that book, not charming at all. I'm pretty sure his only personality traits was that like he had a beard and that he was like really nice. But other than that, completely wet, floppy fish of a character. So you're not really buying like why is she falling in love with this guy? What's winning her over about him? This book does not have that problem. I think Hayden is a great love interest for our main character, Alice. Immediately you understand why he's attractive, and he's also flawed. He's kind of shut off, he's closed, he's not very emotional, he has walls up, right? So you know what, she has to fix him. And on the flip side of that, I think Alice is a very interesting character as well, because she's not like a blank slate protagonist, which I feel like Emily Henry doesn't necessarily do as much, but a lot of romance books do kind of do this blank slate, boring protagonist, so you can put yourself in the character. But she is very positive, very optimistic, very bubbly, very friendly, and it comes off of the page. Not just like in a generic, she's nice way, but like in a very like, whoa, this person's like very enthusiastic, and what is it covering up kind of thing, because there is a little bit of that family dynamic, family issues that she's dealing with as well. So I think immediately they became a good couple, where she's trying to use her positivity to break through his stone cold exterior walls, and they fall in love with each other. Like, that's all great stuff. But with the competing storylines of Margaret Ives, and we're constantly doing flashbacks, and we have like the journalistic, stylistic choice of like what the people thought of, like the general press thought of the story versus Margaret's actually retelling of the story. That's kind of how her chapters, Margaret's flashback chapters, start on each one. We kind of lose focus, I would say, about halfway through towards the end of which storyline is more important. Because at first it's Hayden and it's Alice. They're getting together, they're falling in love. They have this dynamic though where they are competing against each other and they both really want this job. Towards the second half, at this point, well, I feel like they get together maybe a little bit too quickly. It's very obvious they have attraction, but there's a pull from Hayden where it's like, I don't want to get involved with you because we're competing, right? We're going for the same job. It's happened to me in the past. This is a bad idea. But they do get together, and then at that point, their conversations all become kind of repetitive because they're not allowed to talk about the journalistic side. They make out, but they don't want to be together, or they do, but they just don't want to say it. And they have that conversation interspersed with the actual new meat of the story, which is Margaret's background, her love story with her husband, and that story and the storyline with her sister, and that takes the forefront for the second half of the book, which I feel like kind of just leaves the real world, the present day part of the storyline kind of stagnant for the second half of the book. And unfortunately, it does still have kind of like the romance tropes where it's like the final fight or the fake breakup and then like the reconciliation at the end, which really didn't feel, maybe not earned necessarily, but it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like these characters would have reacted the way that they did, because I was worried a little bit at the beginning there'd be a little bit more like miscommunication, maybe a little bit too much conflict from the characters at the beginning, but I feel like they got together in a realistic way, maybe just a little bit too early on in the story. But I thought that their conflict at the end, the way that Alice reacted to the twist of the story at the end, I feel like was a little bit strange for her character, because it's really about Margaret, right? And without giving a spoiler, I feel like Alice took it a little bit too personally. And she got upset in a way that caused a miscommunication between her and Hayden, which had a fallout. And then like the end of the story, obviously, these are happy books, right? But I thought the twist was good. I liked how it went, but I also don't feel like that was necessarily earned either. Through her backstories, it's definitely hinted at looking back. I just don't know if I liked it necessarily. So it was good, I guess, but I didn't like it, if that makes sense. Like, I thought that it was a good twist, but maybe I didn't think that that was that great of a twist, personally, in terms of preference liking it. It was earned, what am I saying then? It was earned, it was set up in a way, I think, especially with the characters' backgrounds that are revealed. I'm just being so vague here. So Margaret's revealing her backstory. With the way that's revealed and with other characters' backstories that she hints at, Emily Henry that is, throughout the story, it makes sense, but I didn't love it. But it's fine. But the fact that it also causes miscommunication trope, the fake breakup stuff, I thought was a little bit sloppy there. But that's my biggest complaint with the book. Overall, I still think Emily Henry is a very, very solid writer. And even though she kind of changed direction to a little bit more plot-focused of a book, that solid writing still remains. I just think there were some moments where she has to decide what's the more important part. Because at first I thought we were going to have Hayden and Alice's romance and then switch to Margaret's love story, right? And there are beautiful moments of Margaret and her husband Cosmo's love story where she tells the story of them meeting and them falling in love. And that is a little bit of the portion of the book. And I thought that was beautifully written as well, because Emily Henry does know romance. But that part's over fairly quickly as well, and it's not really the focus of Margaret's story there. So I think that if she's going to go more plot-focused in the future, maybe pace out the romance better throughout, rather than kind of segmenting them into different halves of the book. or maybe just write a straightforward, plot-focused kind of journalistic thriller, because that was like basically what this was. It was a romance journalistic thriller. Maybe she wants to do more plot-focused stuff. I wouldn't mind her writing a book just with that, but obviously romance is her bread and butter. That's what we come here for. So it's a difficult balance there, but I appreciate her going out on a limb, trying something slightly a little different. I thought it was ambitious from her, from such a well-known writer, to do something a little bit more plot-focused, and overall, it was certainly right up my alley. So I very much enjoyed it, and I do recommend it. I do think it's my favorite of her books for sure, but I got something a little bit different out of it than I normally do out of her books. And I feel like the book that she wrote in Great Big Beautiful Life is more akin to the books that I normally read, which now the thing that could also be a negative, because it means I'm reading the same stuff all the time. Not that I think it's derivative, but I kind of like read my fluffy romance novels all the time, but those still exist, right? Don't get me wrong, those still exist. But overall, I digress. This was a great book. I like the way she went with it. I think she's flexing different authorial muscles in this, and it's very, very well done. And at the end of the day, the romance was good romance. There were some touching moments there at the end, and especially like the emotional beats, like the payoff of like the coming to grips with the familial trauma. Very much present in this book, very much satisfying. Yeah, Henry knows what she's doing. So let me know what you thought of the book if you read it, and be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more like it in the future. And as always, thanks for sticking around.